shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you! Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shaft.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, Fred!
Welcome to episode 425 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, December 14th, 2023 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
From Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa.
Hello.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. As always, thank you for your reviews. If you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice. So, Life and Ladder, what have y'all been up to? Because I know I haven't played Paladin or anything meta.
I mean, I haven't played Paladin either. Well, I did. I tried to play Paladin and it didn't go any better than anything else. So I was trying to be hipster earlier in the week. I was trying the Sludge Warlock. That did not go well. I had one really cool lethal where I had a waste remover on board, and I had a tram conductor on board, and they were at 6 life and they had 2 skeletons from Cold Case, and I figured out I could reverb and defile to put 2 sludges on the bottom of my deck, clear their skeletons, and then have the six damage from the sludges go face. Unfortunately, that was pretty much the only game that I won with that deck. So
it made a good clip.
It made a very good clip, and it made the deck seem like it was a lot better than it is. But it made me look very smart for about 15 seconds of my 3-hour stream. It was fantastic.
Here's hoping Sludge gets something in the mini set or something.
Yeah.
It's so fun to play and just hasn't been working.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with it is mainly just that, like, at the time when you want to go in with the sludges, you need your opponent's board to already be clear, and you don't really have room for board clears in that deck. So that's kind of where the issue is, I think. But, you know, it seems like every other blow up your deck Warlock that we've had. It's really fun, and it doesn't win very much. So, but I've been mainly playing like Rainbow Mage because that's mainly what I've wanted to play. I tried some Earthen Paladin, it didn't go well, and like Mage is I've not been going in the right direction, but Mage is the only deck that I really want to play right now, given what the meta looks like, though. And I had some time at lunch today. I had one game where I queued into a Paladin. I discovered a Blizzard. I got a Blast Mage on time. Everything was great. And I should have stopped there because I decided to queue up a second game. And so let me ask you this. If I told you that in the course of this game, I excavated 4 times, got an Amanthul, discovered a Grom from the Amanthul, the Amanthul stuck. I got to play Grom, ping it, and copy it and give it +2/+2. What would you think that the outcome of that game would be?
That you got Keeper's Strength.
Oh, no. This was not against a Paladin.
Oh, no?
This was against the Reno Blood Decay.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Oh no.
that's not nearly enough damage. What are you doing here?
So I did that, and they still ended the game at 80 life, not life plus armor, life. By the time that I conceded.
They actually like healed back up to their max?
So I think they were running double Vampiric Blood.
Well,
and they were running Dry Scale Deputy. So they got, I don't know if that's the only spell that they run in their deck or they were just exceptionally lucky. And then they fizzled and got the fizzle with the Vampiric Bloods in hand. So they just kept going. They didn't even play Primus that game.
Quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
this is why they should not remove the Unholy Rune from Maw and Paw. No one wants that in Blood Decay.
Yes, please no. I faced enough Blood DKs.
Yeah.
In the past week. I'm on record for my opinions on facing Blood DKs.
I found that like if you're trying to be Highlander, which it's felt, at least what I've seen have mostly been Highlander Blood Decays. It's actually not a great matchup into Paladin. I feel like the way to go would be to still run double Corpse Explosion, double asphyxiate. Like, the problem with trying to fight Paladin right now is there's so many shields, and there hits a point where it's like, oh, I stuck a minion. It is +10 stats now. You had a board? Well, let me pay 4 mana for this Keeper's Strength. Bye-bye, board.
Yeah. It's like you have to clear like literally everything. Like it's like playing against Naga Priest. You have to clear literally everything in order to not die.
Except even more than the current Naga Priest. I've been playing a lot of Paladin. I usually could kill the Blood Decay before they revealed their Reno, but they were usually Reno. And it's very frustrating when you lose to a Reno in a class that's not technically supposed to be Highlander. It's just like, this card. But mostly actually did pretty well against the Blood Decays. I also faced a lot of the Thaddeus Pyrotechnician Druid.
Oh, Fire Druid. Language. That one's Language Hacker's fault because he was playing that on stream up to top 50. Yeah, that deck is horrible to play against. Yeah.
I have heard tell of this deck. I have not faced it.
So what they do, they ramp as much as possible. They do regular Druid things. They like play things that keep your board from completely killing them, hopefully. Sometimes you kill them and you never found out what kind of Druid they were. But if they get up...
the eternal problem of Druid. There's 3 of them. And sometimes you just don't know which one they were because they died.
I mean, they're 24 cards in a win condition a lot of the time, so, you know. I guess it's a little different with Reno.
Splish Splash Whelp, and they died.
Yeah.
Exactly. They play Splish Splash Whelp. If they get enough mana, ideally they do this with ANR, but they play the Nightshade Bud, and they summon a Thaddeus from their deck, and they also get and play a Pyrotechnician, and then they play their entire hand of spells and get a million.
They cover artist the Thaddeus usually also.
Oh yes. Yeah. You have to copy the Thaddeus, and you get at least 1 Pyrotechnician down, and then you get enough fire spells that you get enough direct damage that costs 1 mana or less, and you just send it face.
I mean, everything gets free, right? You double cover artist, and all your even things cost 0.
Yeah. Unless you discover a Sunset Volley, and then you need the second cover artist. Right. And that's what you're basically looking for, is the Sunset Volley, which if you would not have seen it outside of this deck because nobody actually puts it into a deck, but it's a 10 mana mage spell that does 10 damage randomly split across all enemies and then summons a 10 drop. So you're trying to get, if you have Thaddeus in hand, right, or you get Thaddeus to stick, then you want Thaddeus to be on even so that you can play the cover artist for the first cover artist for free, and then you play another cover artist, and now all your even cards are free, and then you just try to get Sunset Volleys and kill them.
I will say, when they put the new expansion early into Arena, Sunset Volley was a hell of a card to have 5 of in a deck. That was a good time.
Yeah.
I would imagine. Yes, or sometimes you just pyroblast them in the face, or you fireball them in the face.
Whatevs.
But the Sunset Volley is a really top-notch card. Sometimes they have to play ANR to heal to full. If you're playing Paladin, which I usually was, I was playing like every possible iteration of Paladin. I also played some of the Death Rattle Buzzard Hunter, but then I thought I'm going to play more of this after they inevitably nerf Paladin, and in the meantime, I'm on the record as having played Paladin before it was this broken, so I have to take advantage now of it being this broken, try to really climb my rank. I actually really enjoyed the Earthen Paladin, even though I think it's not nearly as good, but
it's not.
You can have it feels more mid-rangey. It has that sustain. You make these really big guys. Sometimes you just don't have any taunt, and that's a problem. But it is really satisfying to get just really big guys without even necessarily having to discount your Garden's Grace. Or, I mean, you also run Garden's Grace because there's a certain package of cards that just all of the Paladin decks run. I imagine that the data sites are having trouble sorting out all of these archetypes right now, especially from the opponent's side. But I enjoyed the Earthen Paladin. It's something different. Then I went back to regular Paladin to try to make a push to 11x, although it's early early yet, but I was like, I'll get there and then try to stay there. And I also played a couple of games of Battlegrounds. I played 2 games of Battlegrounds, which is 2 more than I usually play in a week. And the spells were quite fun. I won the first one handily because I had not played in the season yet and had no MMR. So no one knew what was happening. And I got a nice demon synergy going and just blasted everyone. And then in the second game, they said, oh, you know what you're doing. Here are people who also know what they're doing. And someone got that minion that changes so it always survives at 1 health.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it
that one's
had
annoying.
3-digit attack. And I was not in the 3 digits because I'm not good enough. So it was just 0% chance to win on the deck tracker every time that I faced them. I did get second. But the spells were a really interesting way to change up the curve, use that extra mana, gold. Shows you which mode I usually play. And definitely felt like it added a lot to the experience, but also all of it feels new to me whenever I go into a new meta because like I don't recognize 2/3 of these minions.
It's always fun when when you have a hero power with specific tribe and then you end up just like hovering over each one of the minions in the shop every turn to see if they're the right type or not, because there's no way to know just from looking at the outline what, family they belong to. So yeah.
Yep, I did a lot of that. I was playing Sire Denathrius with a death rattle quest, and then you can discover, or you get 2 random undead every turn once you complete the quest, and I like didn't get offered any undead. So I had to go with beast death rattles for the first half of the game. This is part of why I got so demolished by that switch to survive at 1 health every time minion.
Yeah. Whenever I pick a hero that has a specific minion type synergy, that's a perfect way to guarantee that I will never see one of those over the course of the game. I will just not get offered any of them. It's just science at this point.
Every single other person decides to go for the same tribe as you. That's always how it works.
Yeah. Well, Edo, how was your week?
Oh, well, this is week 2 of me taking care of Leah the whole time. So today was kind of weird. She did like all her naps in the first half of the day, and then like 20 minutes in the afternoon.
Oh.
Really keep me on my toes, but inevitably I spend like the last hour just singing because she seems to enjoy when she is sung to. So I'm getting very familiar with the Beatles, bringing up some songs from my youth. Like I realized I have very nearly memorized Michelle Branch's first album, The Spirit Room.
Oh, that's a very good album. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And I'm sure I will break out into like other music eventually for my sanity. We'll see if she tolerates others. So sometimes I try playing different stuff and she's like, what is this?
Start
Too
going
young for dance music. Yeah.
It's never too young to introduce your child to My Chemical Romance.
And teach them that change is part of life and you have to get used to it.
I'll just play like Steam Powered Giraffe or other various weird stuff. See what sticks. 8-Bit Brothers went okay, but I don't know those ones as well.
One weird thing that just started happening. So one of the twins who are 14, she apparently wants to listen to music on CD now. I guess it's retro. So like they went to the thrift shop like a couple of weeks ago and they come back and she spent like, I don't know, $10 on CDs. I'm like, I own all of these, right? Like half of them. Like they had like the Spin Doctors album. Like I know I have that. So now instead of going to the thrift shop, she goes shopping in my bin of CDs in the basement.
I have to say, it's like the cutest thing in the world. My niece, Adar, loves her grandpa, and he has a lot of vinyl, and so like
Oh,
she'll
yeah.
come over and like play vinyl. Oh, it's so cute. But
Yeah,
yeah, in
Maureen
terms
just
of
got a record player too, and I went out Sunday to get her the Charlie Brown Christmas on like limited edition on vinyl for her
nice,
to play on her record player for
it
Hanukkah. Christmas album
it
for Hanukkah, but
really.
whatever.
I don't know anything about sound, and I can't hear the difference, but it's just cooler having stuff on
Yeah.
vinyl. Like it just looks cool. I always appreciate when bands are like selling, the vinyl. But in terms of Hearthstone stuff, this is one of those metas where I actually am struggling a lot because Paladin is definitely popular and good, but it also doesn't feel super targetable, at least not by things that I want to play. I don't want to play Priest, basically. And the things that are really good at killing Paladin because they have silence and clears are not great against some of the other things that are going on.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of diversity, which you would think is good as a deck builder, except I am the kind of deck builder that's like, no, let me murder this one specific thing. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I have bounced around a lot. I have had the most fun playing Miracle Rogue. I built a version that is pretty sweet. The only excavate is drilly, and sometimes you shadow step that. But Flint Firearm is really fun. That's another one that's great to shadow step, and it just like does a lot of value things. And I had to add Deafens to like have a shot against Paladin, but
Deafen is
Oh, I
very
forgot that's a
annoying.
rogue
The
card.
few times I've seen it
yeah, it's
as a
it's real
paladin.
good. It's real good, but in terms of things I could actually climb with, it's basically like Mech Rogue and
Yeah.
Sifcraft Mage. I don't know. People are saying Minecraft, which I do
Yeah.
think is a better word than excavate. So
We'll workshop the
Sifcraft,
title.
Plaguecraft, yeah.
Yeah, we'll workshop the name. But yeah, that's it's at least it's fun. Sometimes you don't always win, but
I
at
do the
least it's
30
fun.
card though. I
Yeah.
cannot. I tried the Yanming list and I was like, nope, I can't do it. I just
Yeah.
give me 1-drops, let me kill them.
You could play paladin and have 6 1-drops that you
No.
can cheat out.
I mean, Mage has a bunch of 1-drops now, right? You've got Miracle Salesman, you've got the thing that gives you an Arcane Bolt, and usually there's at least one of the Tram Operator.
Tram
So
Conductor, yeah.
yeah, lots of 1-drops, and then you just play other crap and keep hitting them. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that is a fun deck. I have played some of it.
Yeah.
And I always liked when I was playing paladin and I would play like the neutral 1-drop. And on the first day of Earthen, a lot of people were like, what is happening? Why have
Yeah.
you got a boogie down that gave you 2 foul eggs? I actually would not keep foul egg.
Well,
Because
you don't
I
want to
just want
keep
a boogie.
fouling.
Yeah, you don't want that in your opening hand.
You want it to have taunt.
Exactly. Otherwise, like you do have Hand of a Doll, you do have the aura that gives it +3 attack and lifesteal, but that's not what
Or
you
just
want.
kill
You
it with
want
a
to have
keeper
taunt.
strength.
Well, because in the Earthen deck, at least I guess I didn't look up a list, but my understanding of how you build it is you still have the 1/1 Divine Shield taunt because
Yes.
that's reasonable to resurrect as 2/2.
Yeah.
But then your other 1-drops are the Egg and Miracle Salesman because you want to pull them out, but you don't want to resurrect them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you also run High Ho Silverwing, so you're like you've got some stuff that's
'Cause
going to
that's
mess up
fine
your
to hit.
resurrects.
That's a great
Yeah,
resurrect.
it's
that
I
gets
mean,
you
gets
you another tears.
mess up in scare quotes, right? Like it's not really messing it up, but it's if you're trying to go for max earthens, you're not getting an earthen out of it, but that's fine.
Really what that is an Amethyst deck. And then you get Amethyst
Yeah.
back when you do Tears often. And she's just really good. And also works fine in the mirror when you set 2/2. I wasn't quite certain whether this would work for Earthens. It wouldn't work for the automatons from Priest, but it does work for Earthens. They do stay 2/2s. And if you get an Amethyst and just stick it, like they're just staring at you and can't do anything if they don't have their own. Also, good thing to know, if you see an Amethyst and you do an AoE against them, even if that's going to kill the Amethyst, everything will take 2.
Yep.
Because she doesn't
Yeah,
die
because
until
they're
the
all.
end
It's
of
just
it.
because she's still on the board. Yeah, and
Also-
the reason it works with the Earthens but not the automatons is that the automatons is like a persistent effect on the card text, whereas the Earthens are given the buff when they're summoned. So that buff is static, whereas the buff on the automaton is persistent, which I learned once when I thought I was shrinking one by using an Ogre Fist Boulder on it, and all just made the problem even worse.
Oh no. Yeah, they right, because if you have one in play and you play another one, they both get bigger, right? So
Right. Unlike Earthens, which are not that way.
the other thing not to do to Amethyst is play too fast and try and kill it with 2 swings of the weapon that sets it to a 3/3. Don't do that. It is wonderful to behold, but that does not work. It takes 2 and then it takes 2. So yeah.
And meanwhile, you buffed its attack.
Yeah. But we have a decent amount of news to talk about, and then in evergreen explanations. So we should probably jump right into it.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
Yeah, I mean, by recent standards, this is a light news week. There's still some stuff going on, but not to the level that we've been getting like the last few weeks. We actually might get out of news in under an hour for once. We'll see. I'm not promising anything, but but we'll see. But we did get one more hot fix that came out as a server side fix, mainly around Battlegrounds and Arena. The one main thing to note in terms of Battlegrounds is that they changed the turn time. They adjusted the turn times. I don't think this is reverting the extra time that was there at the beginning of the patch. It might have, but what they've done is they've made the turn times at the beginning of the game shorter and the turn times at the end of the game longer to account for the current minigame. So if you are accustomed to going and getting a snack in the first couple of turns, you may want to make sure you have your snack ready to go because you may not have as much time as you thought you had. They made some armor changes as well. We certainly do not need to enumerate all of them, but you know, if you're playing Battlegrounds, you will pay attention to that. They adjusted the card appearance rates for Arena. The general Priest class card appearance rate has been increased, which means I should probably be playing Arena and not Standard. And the appearance rate for certain high impact cards was increased for Priest, Rogue, and Warlock. It was reduced for Hunter, Death Knight, Paladin, and Warrior. So this is the way they do balance in Arena, right? Is that they just they don't have to change the card. They can't really change the card specifically for Arena, but they can control how often certain cards show up. So if there are cards that are good, they can make them show up more. If there are cards that are too good, then they can make them show up less. So that's something just to be aware of. If you're playing a lot of Arena, you may want to think about some classes you may not have always thought about. And there were a couple of bug fixes. The main one we talked either last week or the week before about the issue with the partner cards, where Greedy Partner, if you shadow stepped it and then you played it again, you wouldn't get the coin. They hot fixed in the last time around. They rushed in the fix for Greedy Partner because that was the card that was actually played. Now they've put the change in for Rowdy Partner and Line Dance Partner, which are the 3 and 4s that nobody plays. So, you know, if you're one of those people who gets one of those, know about that. They fixed a bug where Spurfang could sometimes summon an invisible minion with his Death Rattle. I think I've seen that happen, and that is disturbing when it happens. So they fixed that. They fixed a bug where in Battlegrounds where Heist Baron Togwaggle's hero power wouldn't work on a tavern that was full of tavern spells. And I think there's like an effect that makes that happen. I forget what it is. Or there's something from like a card effect that will make that happen, but that was a bug that I think was in the very beginning of the patch that they fixed that. And then there was an issue with, we talked about the new player progression last week, and there was a bug where if you had finished the apprentice track before the tavern guide, which is the replacement for the apprentice track, you could get stuck in the tavern guide, which is obviously no good. So they fixed that as well. So following that, one of the heroes in Battlegrounds that had their armor changed was Tathalan. Is that how you pronounce that? I don't even know. Because the card, it's also a standard card. It's not seen any play in standard, but
Yeah.
but yeah. So apparently, according to Ridiculous Hat, it was banned in Battlegrounds for crimes against Tier 2.
Okay, so I looked up what this was. There was a video that had it linked from Ardu or RDU. I'm not sure. RDU. Where, and he was not the only one doing this, but it's an entertaining video. I've linked it in the show notes. It's long, but you only need the first 10 or 15 minutes to get the gist. Basically, so Tathalan makes every third spell free. There is a pirate minion called Landlubber that offers an extra 1 or 2 if it's golden spells in the shop at a given time. And there is a tier 2 spell called Strike Oil. It costs 3 gold and it increases your max gold by 1. So what you do is you stay in tier 2 so that you can see more strike oils. You get a bunch of landlubbers. And a lot of the tier 1 and tier 2 spells give you more gold. So you can just make sure that strike oil is always the third, multiple of 3 spells, so it's free. And then your other ones are ones that get you more gold. And on turn 5, RDU had a relatively normal 7 gold. On turn 6, he started with 16 out of 8 gold and ended with 12 max gold. On turn 7, he ended with 20 max gold and an incredible board. It stopped losing combats. On turn 8, he triple leveled because he had 40 gold out of a max 21.
Seems
and it was pretty smooth sailing from there, I think. So that is why Tathalan has been temporarily banned.
Sounds more like a Ponzi scheme to me, but it's it is what it is. So Wintervale is live, by the way. So do your quests. You probably are going to have to do the quests. It's a lot harder to get through the event without, but you also have 3 weeks to do it. And so you also have the Wintervale emotes. There is a Wintervale themed tavern brawl with the Great Fathers delivering presents that you can pop. That comes up every year around this time. And I think we're supposed to get new Wintervale skins next Tuesday in the shop, I believe. I think they said the 19th, which is Tuesday. So there are no new skins there this week, but there will be next week.
And luckily the quests are pretty easy this time. Like if you just play, you will, play 25 cards, destroy 30 minions, deal 100 damage.
Play a game of traditional Hearthstone. Yeah, play a game of Battlegrounds. Yeah, it's stuff that's not. It's not like play Flint Firearms 6 times. Like it's not anything like that. So and happy Wintervale to all who celebrate. So, and also there was an article on Esports GG by just a guy titled "How I Became the World's Foremost Game Designer Creator." Now, for those of you who don't know, just a guy, friend of the show, is also Cora and Sage's father. Cora and Sage are both designers on the Hearthstone team. It is actually it's a pretty sweet article talking about like how he got into games and then how he got his kids into games to the point where they were able to join, well, both really good at the game and then able to ultimately join the game design team and start designing the game. So it's a fun article. We don't want it to go too much to his head, but you should go read it. And-
It's too late. It has already gone to his head.
oh yeah, that's fair, I suppose. But yeah,
But it's also a very sweet article.
yes. So so you should go read that. And then yeah, we have tournaments. I guess we can it's World, so even though it's just news, we can still play the bumper.
It's the grand tournament!
Yes, I get to have my bumper and my 2 minutes. They actually put an in-client announcement. Sodal was freaking out. Yeah, if you go
that's
in
pretty
client,
cool.
it gives a pop-up that says, watch the Masters Tour World Championship. Tune in this weekend to see the top players battling for their share of the $350,000 prize pool. And if you click the learn more, it goes to the blog post, which has all the information. They got the tweet out saying who's casting this weekend. Maybe a little late, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. The in-client thing really is just such a big deal. There's so many people
Yeah,
that are
it
just going to
is.
be anyone who plays. I guess I was going to say anyone who plays on PC, but really just probably a lot of people who play it will be like, oh, I was going to put Twitch on anyway. I'll put on the World
Yeah.
Championships. So really curious to see what our numbers are going to look like for the weekend. We have the full range of casters this time. There's 6 of us. Apparently, that used to be the normal number. It was kind of funny doing tech rehearsal. Sodal and Raven often reminisce, and TJ and Lorna. But yeah, it used to just be 6. That was the number because then no one ever had to cast 2 matches in a row. But then it's been 5 recently. I wasn't going to respond to this on Twitter, but I did find it hilarious that someone responded, why don't you do 1 fewer caster to pay I have to find the exact wording for this. It was really a Hall of Famer here in just salt posts.
This isn't Squelch though. I don't know if we're stealing their thunder by posting salt.
Yeah, maybe a little, but yes. Pay 1 less caster, it should be fewer, and use the money to get a dev that isn't useless and nerfs Paladin. They probably don't know that we've been told there's balance changes next week. They haven't told us what they are, but we were told they're happening, so that there's another patch before the holidays. And also, how much do they think we get paid? There's no shot that one event could pay for a salaried employee. That's not how that works. But
I mean,
anyway,
they're yelling at the Hearthstone esports account and not the Play Hearthstone account, first of all. And
so that's a positive.
They are someone who is yelling at the Hearthstone esports account for anything other than for something that they posted as opposed to something that they didn't post. So
right,
I mean, that's already we already have an idea of how many brain cells they're rubbing together to do that. So it's fine. Yeah. I am just excited at the prospect that you could actually live the dream of getting to cast with another woman at the same time.
Yes.
I don't know if that's planned to happen, but I would love to actually see you create history that way because it's been a hell of a long time coming.
Yeah, it's been a very long time since that happened. I think, it obviously would have been back when Gio was casting.
I don't even know if that even happened. Did Gio and Cora ever cast together?
No, I think Gia and Dawn cast together.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Not
that's
positive.
right. Yeah.
Dawn's in chat. She can confirm.
Yes.
But yeah, it has certainly not happened often enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a near thing. Not actually, but it felt like it because there was some miscommunications that had me very confused. I hadn't gotten an email after everyone else had gotten their emails. Turned out it was a clerical error, but I for 24 hours, I really thought I was not casting this weekend when I had expected to be. So glad that all got worked out.
And Hearthstone can pass the Bechdel test again. I can't take full credit for that. That was a contiguity in chat, but
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so it's only 8 players this year, not 16. I know last week I should have been saying all this. I just was not prepared enough. But yeah, 2 groups into a single elim. So there's going to be 8 matches day 1, 5 matches day 2. The players are Gyu, Rekvem, Levick, Hemlock, Pocket Train, CJ Kaka, WeQ, and Meaty. And I know what you're all thinking. Is CJ Kaka going to bring Naga Mage again? I don't think so.
He could bring Naga Priest.
He could bring
Good.
Naga Priest.
that is a deck. It was not just me, guys. It is a deck.
Yeah. Perhaps he'll be the only person to bring Fire Druid. I really hope no one actually brings Fire Druid.
It's so like I can't even imagine having to deal with like the animations. Like it's Fallen a Priest all over again. Like
At that point, you're just shoutcasting. I mean, that's
yeah. At that point, you're just kind of like saying, "Whoa, what's happening?" Like you don't even need to like say what actually they're playing. You could just like talk about the setup and then see if they're dead or not. You know, like that's
That's what you do as the opponent when that's happening, and that's what I did when watching the RDU video. He was playing cards. Like even if I knew all the cards, I would have had no idea what was happening because he was playing like 5 every second, possibly literally. So
yeah. If I had to guess, it seems like there'll be a decent amount of Paladin, probably banned, and then my money is on Mage being the next most popular class. And what people do from there is a toss-up. Could see some Nature Shaman again. Could see, various Druid. I would be a little surprised if we don't see a couple Enraged Warriors and maybe a Hunter.
Yeah, or a Naga Demon Hunter, right? Because like that's still seeing some play at high levels.
Well, and once you ban Paladin, things really shift around. So
yeah, because you can't really target it, right? Like there's no target Paladin lineup that you'd really feel comfortable playing. That's not going to hard lose if somebody doesn't bring it.
Right, there might be, but then people probably are going to say, except I'm banning Paladin, so the only people that are going to leave up Paladin, I want to be good against them, in which case you bring Earthen Paladin, which does better against anyone trying to target. So we shall see. Yeah. But will there be a Death Knight? Someone asks.
I mean, well, I don't know. They didn't say that they have to bring it like last year, so that's something. But
right.
I just brought up HS Replay top 1000 last 3 days. Both Paladin, Showdown, and Aggro. Mech Rogue, Naga Priest is at 52% at top 1000.
I would imagine there will be a couple Mech Rogues. Yeah, if not a bunch.
Naga Demon Hunters at like 52%, and Rage Warriors at 51%. Reno Shaman, Treant Druid, Dragon Druid, and Plague Death Knight are all above 50%. And then Mage is just below 50%, 49.5. Interestingly, the Renathal list is a slightly higher win rate than the non-Renathal list at top 1000 for Mage.
Well, I don't know. They see the lines better.
Maybe they just have better RNG. I don't know.
I think there's just a lot more like discovers and changing game plans in the 40 card version.
Yeah.
And I would much rather just play minions and hit them in the face while freezing their minions. So
yeah, I guess it depends on what you're trying to counter, right?
But I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of people just say, yeah, I'm not doing Excavate and Mage at all, because the Elemental Inspiration deck is still quite good.
Yeah.
It's a good deck.
Yeah, and then you get to play keyboard, which you don't get to do in the Excavate deck. So.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and Donkey's also pointing out there's a very small sample size for the Renathal list, which is fair. Right. That is a fair statement.
So yeah, Worlds, it's fun. Watch it, or I suppose keep watching by the time this comes out.
Yeah, you'll also get, there are also Twitch drops, so you'll get 2 Badlands packs for watching, but also please watch. Like
Please.
we
Please,
would
please.
really like, for there to be a proposition for Hearthstone esports to continue. There's been some speculation. I don't think we need to get into that, but there's, it is unclear what Microsoft's stance on esports is compared to where Activision's clearly was, which was that it's not making money directly, so we're not spending money on it. Microsoft may have a different philosophy, but certainly having good viewer numbers would help make that case.
Would love to see 40K in that viewership box. That would be.
I mean, I would just love to see it so that we get, the next time that we do these, we get a LAN, because I was watching the TFT Vegas Open this weekend, and I forgot. I know, but I'm hoping against hope, because I forgot like how like intense like a live event, even for something like this, which is like turn based, like something like TFT, right? It makes such a big difference just having a live audience to, show that energy, and that would be amazing. I mean, just do it at BlizzCon, right? Like, just do Worlds at BlizzCon. Like, that's an easy thing. You don't have to book anything else. Like,
that's the one way I see it happening.
Yeah. Like, hand the trophy to the winner at the end of it, right? Like, they did that every year up until now, right? It's only, or I guess maybe not in 2018, but because they had Worlds in February that year. But
it was at BlizzCon where Lion won,
yeah,
right? And
I was there.
Yeah. It was
amazing.
I was not, but it was incredible to watch.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah, that atmosphere was amazing. It was one of the coolest things I was ever like part of. Absolutely. Like, and people just like, you could see as it was getting closer, like people were just like converging on that area, even if they weren't necessarily, going to be there otherwise. Like, it was clear that something was happening, and it was very, very cool.
And yeah, even when you're watching on Twitch, when you see that live audience, I mean, there's a reason why, if you watch a lot of, talk shows and stuff, they have an audience there, because that energy of a live audience makes a big difference.
Yeah. Like they have a check format in TFT like they do in BGs, and there was like, when I was watching it this weekend, there was like 6 people had the lobby in check, and one of the people who wasn't was just like, it was at one life and beating everybody. And they were just like chanting his name at every match because he was keeping the tournament going, and the crowd wanted the tournament to keep going, so they were just like chanting his name in between rounds. It was the coolest thing.
Shout out to Necra, who was hosting the event. I'm uncertain.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the line is there. I know she was definitely on the broadcast team. I don't know what her role specifically was, but
watch, and as Don points out, if you're in the main channel, ignore the chat. I just minimize the chat.
Watch on your TV, put it in theater mode.
Yeah. You can also watch a co-streamer, because the co-streaming numbers do count towards the normal the numbers, and people will be co-streaming. So you can also, if you don't like the Twitch chat, you can join a co-stream and watch it there as well. So
there was about 12 hours where I thought I was going to co-stream.
Me too.
You still could.
I still could, but I also could like pass out in the middle of it, which is probably what would happen if I tried. So I had a lot more energy on Monday when I suggested that than today when I'm not having to do it. So I would push through for you, but I think on my own I'm good. I'll just watch it in the comfort of my room on my own.
Fair enough. Well, I think we have stalled enough. We should probably move on over to our explanations for the week.
Speaking of countering things. What was that?
What happened?
I don't know.
The bumpers have gone on strike.
I think the bumper went on strike, so you just have to put that one in manually. So the bumper's in our heart.
Just like the clapping, the bumper is in our heart.
We always fix it in post continuity.
All right, if you're listening to the raw audio, insert bumper here. All right. So for our explanations today, we figured we would do an evergreen topic, which is tech cards. What are they good for? When do we play them? And what even makes something a tech card? I had written here, tech cards. What are they good for? Absolutely nothing. Exceptions apply. Sometimes they are good for something. So first, I just wanted to say, what is a tech card? And what I had written here was it is a card aimed to counter a very specific strategy in a specific matchup or small set of matchups. So not necessarily quite the same thing as like disruption. It can be a card that's not exactly disruption, but it's a card that is countering something that is not super widespread in the meta, and that might not be as useful in other matchups. Especially people call things that are reactive tech cards, even though you can also have like proactive cards that are mostly good in certain matchups. But if we think of prototypical tech cards, we're thinking like Viper, Dirty Rat, Theatar, Stomper, Cult Neophyte, Steam Cleaner, except in Sludge Warlock, where some people are playing it as part of the main plan, although I don't think that's the current best iteration. Or, if you're playing AoE like just for Paladin right now.
Right.
Or there have been times when Control Priest had to play Shadow Word Ruin just for specific matchups. So if you're playing something just for specific matchups, then that's a tech card. And people will sometimes talk about hard versus soft tech cards as well.
Yeah. I think the distinction there is like, okay, a hard tech card is what, demolition something, like destroy a location, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Eater of Secrets is kind of like that's the quintessential one, right? Which was an old card that said, destroy all your opponent's secrets and get +1/+1 for them. It was like a 4-mana 2/4. It is
literally
something
only
that
works against like 4 classes.
yeah, it's there are only 4 classes at the time. There were only 3 classes because that was before Rogue even had secrets. There were only 3 classes that could even run secrets, and if you are not getting the Battlecry text to matter, then it is just a terrible card. Like, you're never playing a 4-mana 2/4 if you're not getting the benefit out of it. But you also would have to do that to be able to kill through an ice block back then, right? So that's what like a hard demolition renovator, I think, is the card you're thinking of. Like destroy location. Like Dirty Rat is often, I think you could consider that typically hard, a hard tech card.
It's kind of middle of the road. Like, there's a lot of times where it's like, well, this isn't for you, but there's still good things I could hit in your hand, right? With Dirty Rat. I kind of put Dirty Rat in the middle.
There was a card like EMP tech, like 5-mana 5/5 destroy a mech. Like that, like that sort of thing, like where it's very specific. Generally with a hard tech card, it's very obvious what it's targeting, and you're only going to put it in if you are seeing something like that. Like weapon destruction is probably like at the soft end of hard removal, just because there's a lot of weapons that you can hit with it.
I think it is the most common of the hard techs, and presently it probably falls somewhere more in the middle because Ignis exists, right? Because people just get this 10-mana neutral weapon that if you are playing anything not aggressive, you have to have a response to, right? You have to have an answer to, well, what happens if they play a 10-mana Ignis weapon? And sometimes it's just, well, I should have won earlier. But
I should have my own.
In terms of like truly like softer tech cards, I would say you're like Lotheb. Most classes have spells, and you could just kind of play it, and it was good. Another one would be like
Starfish would probably.
Starfish
is hard, probably harder, but like Shard of the Naru would be a soft tech, like in a priest deck, because you're generally like you can trade it and you generally will find a use for it, but there are times when you don't need to run it, or like Shadow Word Ruin.
Tradable has certainly made things a lot more palatable in terms of certain tech cards. I would say, like, we talked about running extra AoE for Paladin, say, if you're doing a Plague DK, do you run the 3-mana 2/1 that finales to deal 2 damage to all enemies, right? Like that, you can find uses for it against anything, and in a pinch, it's 2 face damage. But like the reason you're running it is paladin. It's just more flexible in terms of its uses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
and
if
of
you were to
course-
run like Heat Wave and Mage, right? You like I've seen some people do that too,
I
where
saw a
that's
lot
the
of that.
yeah. So
I
it's the
like it.
2 mana spell
pretty
that does 2 damage to a minion and its neighbors, or quick draw to all enemies. So if you have a lot of one health minions, that's pretty effective.
Or there's things such as Okani, which can actually be used proactively as well. You know, here I made a board. I'm going to make it harder for you to clear it on curve, for example. But it can
Framester.
also Framester.
Yeah.
Framester is just useful. I mean, it would be if there was one. If Reno was a class card, I would call Framester a hard tech. But Reno is not a class card, and it's not completely useless in other matchups. It's still a pretty hard tech, but not
Yeah,
not
but,
like
You can find uses for it, but it's mostly for Reno decks, yeah.
I mean, we didn't play it in decks that ran duplicates, but when you're doing one-ofs, it's a 3/3 for 3 that you just run out, and sometimes it hoses the opponent and skips their turn. Like,
Yeah. It was also
Yeah,
better
that's-
when Naga DH was in the same meta, because then you could use the frames to mess up their draw spell part of the Naga, part of the sharpshooter text.
Pazic, I don't even know if he counts as a tech card. Like,
No.
I think
Pozic's just
how-
tempo, honestly.
Yeah,
like
how
like
you
the times
play him
yeah.
can be tech, right? If you're like, oh, I need to burn a specific thing, sometimes you play him to burn a card from them. But Pazic is just like, play this as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Pazic is
And
just
it's
a
annoying.
good card.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people play Ignis if they're not planning to play Ignis for 10 mana. They're planning to play Ignis for a 1 mana weapon as removal, or as I have something that I can attack Wind Fury with. If it's attack Wind Fury, that's part of your game plan. If you're playing it specifically as removal to counter something, I would say, then you're playing it as tech. But that's not usually how people are playing Ignis, so I wouldn't call Ignis a tech card.
Yeah.
In general.
No, I mean Ignis is just in everything, and Pazic is generally tempo. Like the way the tech card version of Pazic is Immolate, right? That's the tech card, right? When you say I know that my opponent's gonna have something that they're not gonna be able to play until they draw the rest of it, and I want to make them play it in 3 turns or lose it, right? Like, and now that doesn't work out almost ever, but it's and that's what we'll get into about like when should you tech, but that would be a tech card that you would put in if you were trying to counter like some sort of a combo deck, right, where they're going to hold on to pieces forever, or like a Sif in hand that they need to play it now before they've accumulated all the burn or bump or built up the spell damage, something like that.
I one time was playing Sith Mage and had someone immolate me, and it burned my Sith. And that is the only time I have ever cared about an immolate. And I've actually seen it a number of times. Not very often, but yes, we'll definitely talk about when should you tech card. But first, just wanted to, don't forget that when you net deck a list, you want to pay attention to sort of what rank bracket or situation was this deck made for. Was it made before balance changes that have happened? Is it a top legend deck and maybe you're not at top legend? Because most people are not at top legend. Is it a tournament deck and they're expecting to ban something that you're seeing a lot, or target something that you're not seeing a lot? So you do want, before you play a list, and this is just good advice in general, look at the list first. Don't do me and hit the start button and you'll figure it out while it's finding a game. Look at the list and see if you can figure out why the cards are there. And if you really have no idea, it might be teching against a matchup you're not seeing. You can also look at VODs. HSR has like suggestions for VODs with deck lists, even if you don't pay for the premium. You can ask in the Discord. You can look at other versions of the deck. So it's worth taking a second to see, like, are the cards here a good fit for what I'm doing? Now, I wouldn't say before you have a sense of how a deck works, just start changing out all the cards. That's a little bit like taking a new recipe and changing out everything before you try it for the first time. But sometimes there's a card specifically that's just clearly not for you.
Yeah,
If you see something weird,
like a Speaker Stomper and you're not ever seeing Nature Shaman.
Right. Yes. So that's a good example. Cantaloupe recently posted a Plague Decay, and there was a Speaker Stomper in there. And I was like, Yeah, that's going out because I am not seeing anything that Speaker Stomper would affect. I'm pretty sure it's for Nature Shaman, but similarly, like when you get the Wire Highlander Shaman and you see a Trapdoor Spider, that's not just in there. Like that's for something. You need to learn what that's for and if you need it. And it kind of was for Naga DH, and so kind of fell
And
out of
Sif
this.
to an extent too.
Yeah, to some extent, Sif. It's not as good there, but could still be. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was more like after they played all the rest of their minions before we had excavates. Before they were playing excavates in the list, like they didn't have a lot of minions. They played out all their minions, and then they just have Sif left, and you play that, and then they have to figure out a way to get rid of it. And this goes double for tournament lists. If you're taking a list that somebody plays in the worlds this weekend, you need to look at that and really think about anything that's unusual, because the lists, especially in like an 8-person bracket where people know what the other players are likely to bring and may hard target the people who are going to be in their group to even narrow it further, they're going to be targeting very specific things that you may never see. There, like Nature Shaman is something that I would not be surprised if there are techs built into some of these decks for that you will not, if you see it on ladder, you will not be seeing it enough to be justifying those cards. So like you want to make sure that you're like tournament lists in particular, and this is less relevant than it used to just because we have less tournaments than we used to have, but you want to make sure that you understand why they're doing what they're doing. And then generally you don't want to try to take a tournament list on ladder because they're going to be teched very specifically.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, like, if we do see some Mech Rogue, some Enraged Warrior, if there are potentially Speaker Stompers in there, because these are the caliber of players that are likely to be seeing Nature Shaman more than Highlander Shaman.
Yeah. And also because you're in Conquest and not ladder, and we'll get into like what the goal is of tacking in a minute, but that also, because the goal is different, then the threshold for teching becomes different as well, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, well, and that transitions well into if you are thinking about whether to include a tech card, whether you're thinking about taking it out because it's already there, or you're thinking about putting it in for a particular matchup. Mathematically, the question is, do the percentage points that you gain in the targeted matchups make up for percentage points that you might lose in other matchups? Now, most of the time, you're not going to have enough data to be able to say that for sure mathematically. There may be some data that you can look at between different lists, for example, but that gives you a sense of what are you considering. So one thing is, does this card actually really help you in the matchup it's supposed to help you in? Because sometimes it feels like it does, but another strategy would actually maybe win before the thing you're teching against even comes out. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And how much does it help you? If it helps you but only a little bit and it really hurts you in other matchups, it's probably not worth it. So you also want to say, how much does this hurt me in other matchups? And that depends partly on your deck. Does your deck have a really tight list, or is your deck Reno Shaman and there's like a million options for card 30? It doesn't matter that much.
I'm just gonna say, no one is running the Death Rattle that puts 2 Snake Oils in the opponent's deck. It's not happening. It's not worth it just to try and some of the time shut down people's Reno. Like that's.
I thought that's hand, not deck even.
Is it? No.
I think it's hand. It's
no,
hand,
no,
isn't it?
it's
deck. Oh, it is
it's
deck? Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it's 4 mana, and what else?
And a Death Rattle.
And it's a Death Rattle, and it's tradable. So if they're not Reno, they can trade it.
Yeah.
It's annoying to have to spend 1 mana to get a real card, but not like as annoying as you having to play a 4 mana 4/5 with a Death Rattle.
As opposed to Framester, which was just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes this turns their stuff off and does a bad thing to them, no matter what if they draw it. So
yeah, and this also kind of goes to the question of like, why is Steam Cleaner not in every Reno deck? Because Plague Decay exists, and the answer for that is twofold. One is that Plague Decay, there's one deck that really does what Plague Decay does, right? Like generally what you're trying to target is not necessarily one specific deck, unless that deck is literally like the entire meta. Or you're more likely you're trying to target a class, a few different decks that all kind of do the same thing. like you would put in weapon destruction because a lot of different decks have Ignis, and or they have, you know, Horn of the Windlord or whatever, or or you're putting it in primarily for the Dr. Holiday weapon, but also enough decks have Ignis that you're gonna get value out of it, right? But
No joke.
yeah.
Some of the slower decks that I'm doing, it's like the Wire Shaman had, it was Viper in the deck and Viper in the ETC, because sometimes you need two right now, since Ignis is everywhere in slower decks, right? Like,
and sometimes they play more than one Ignis.
Priest can do multiple Ignis.
Yes.
Shamans, it's like you both want to get rid of the Holiday weapon and the Wind Fury weapon, or, you know, they don't have an Ignis just because they don't have good.
No, they have Ignis
cards.
now.
Oh, they
do
do
have
now?
Ignis now.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
they added in.
so
They added in the Cyclopean Crusher, so they get an extra forge, and they have cold storage also, right? So they could get another Ignis if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So
So
like that's where it makes sense, right? Like that's,
if you're going late, you need two Vipers these days.
Yeah.
And
But-
ETC, oh gosh, we could do a whole little tangent on ETC. ETC is the tech of techs. Like,
ETC, your question is, you know, so ETC is a place where you can put different tech cards, but you need to, first of all, are you playing a deck that can play a 4-mana 4/4 and then get its tech card and then play the tech card, and this was better than just trying to kill them? So only some decks that's true, right?
in fairness, you can just play it on 4 if you know what you need, right?
Yeah, no, but again, that's a certain type of deck that isn't trying to do something else on 4.
Right,
So
yeah.
if you're Reno Shaman, it probably makes sense.
Or Blood Decay, or Control
or
Priest,
Priest.
or
Decks that are going longer, this allows them to play some cards that would feel really bad. Otherwise, I think it's a really cool card, ETC. But if you are not kind of already playing ETC, or it's not clearly an ETC deck, you probably just want to kill them instead, if you're playing a more proactive deck. So, but that is where you can put, actually, it's become interesting in Reno decks, because it used to be ETC is where you put the cards that you probably don't need. But now ETC is where you put the cards that you do need a second copy of.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
yes.
people were doing, okay, the ETC has a second Vampiric Blood and a second Soul Stealer, and I forget what the middle thing was, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and like in Priest, you'd put Svalna in there because you don't need that in a lot of matchups, but if you're in a value matchup, then you need it, right? So, and that's not necessarily one deck. It's just like any game that's going to go long, then you have that option. But like,
and if it's a game that's going long, you can afford to play the ETC. And then
exactly.
Play the Svalna.
Well, and the other thing about doing that for Priest is, if you find ETC with Power of Creation, that that's not what
Creation Protocol.
Creation Protocol.
Power of Creation was the mage card. Yeah.
Yeah. That you have forged, you feel a lot better getting 2 ETCs than getting 2 Svalnas.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, but so like when you're running weapon destruction, there's a lot of weapons in the meta. A lot of different decks are running them. You can find use out of it. The only deck that does what Plague DK does in terms of shuffling in duplicates of cards is Plague DK. So when you're putting in a tech for that deck, you're saying this one deck, which is right now at Legend over the last 3 days, making up 9% of the meta. So let's round that up to 10% to make the math easier. So 1 in every 10 games, I'm going to need this card in order to not lose to it. And you're not even necessarily not losing to it. You're just like, it turns 2 of your cards off. They happen to be 2 of the better cards, but it turns 2 of those cards off. It's not like it's completely invalidating your win condition. And oh, by the way, even when you play it, they can just shuffle more in after, and you're right back where you started. So it's like, it's not only like how much of the meta is this thing hitting. In this case, it's very little. And then also, how good is it? Like, do you just win the game? If you like, I've had games where I've Theotar'd the opponent's Sif and still lost, right?
Oh,
and so it's like, does this actually win me the game on the spot if I do this, or is this just going to help me lose more slowly, or maybe turn like a 45% game into a 55% game? Because like, That's where you really have to evaluate, like, how much is this actually, in the best case scenario, when this is working as designed, how much did this actually help me?
Yeah,
I
and
would argue that Plague Decay actually very often wins through Chained Guardian. Like once the plagues have been shuffled in, they have reduced the thing, and so it's like Chained Guardian or
Reska.
Reska. You know, if they're playing the Excavates, which I suppose I'm the only person who doesn't. You know, there's all kinds of things they get from value off those, right? Having shuffled in a plague activates their pretty good clear in that 4-mana 4/3. So like they're a lot more about just tempo killing your stuff in the mid game than actually killing you with plagues. Like, don't get me wrong, it's great when the opponent draws plagues, because that's a part of why. But almost never am I killing someone because they drew plagues and the plague killed them. Right?
Yeah,
like,
well,
I'm doing damage with minions.
It's not Bomb Warrior.
and this makes the point, you know, you're looking at not just does this help me, you know, one question is, does this actually help me in the matchup? But overall, it's, does this actually help my win percentage in general? Because your goal is not, you know, sometimes you might get really tilted about a certain deck. And by the way, never put in a tech card because you just lost against this matchup twice in a row and you're really tilted about it. Like, go take a break. Then think about whether you actually need this tech card. If something gives you, say, this deck that you're losing to is 10% of the meta, and it gives you a 5%. I mean, let's just to make, you know, it gives you a 5% bump in your win rate against it, which would be a pretty big bump for that matchup. But then it gives you like a 1% lower win rate in the other 90% of the meta, you're losing more often because of that card. So if it's only against a particular deck and it's not totally winning it for you, you know, maybe if there had been, like, back when we had Boar Priest, I think it had like a 5% win rate against Celestial Druid. If there had been some tech card that would just turn off Celestial Alignment, it might have been worth it for Boar Priest. But that's like the only time I can think of we've ever had a matchup that polarized.
Yeah.
Right. So most of the time, you know, it might be that sometimes it's worth, if there's a whole category of decks that you can make yourself better against, even though you're worse against other things, and that just makes your deck less polarized and that feels better. That's one thing. But if you're just laser focused on one deck, it's probably not actually the right idea. You're probably just really tilted about it.
Yeah. The goal in using tech cards is not to make sure you never lose a game. You are always going to have bad matchups. You're going to have bad RNG. You can't make a deck favored against everything. And if you can, it's about to get nerfed. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to improve the overall average win rate over a session, over a season, right? So like on ladder, now we'll talk about tournaments in a second. On ladder, so what you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize your overall win rate. Some matchups are just bad, and no amount of teching is going to help. And even if you can win that matchup, if you're losing everything else, then you're not moving forward. You're not climbing. So that's where you really have to evaluate it. Now, tournaments are a little bit different because you just have to get one win with each deck in Conquest. And sometimes there's like a potential lineup of 3 decks that are just going to hard target you, and you need something to make sure that you can get each deck over the line, right? So sometimes you might tech a little bit more in Conquest, because you don't need to win every game. You only need to win one game with that deck, and then it's through. So the goal is a little bit different in Conquest, and you have a little bit of a lower threshold for teching against specific bad matchups or trying to improve certain matchups to try to get a deck over the line and get it win so you can win the match. That's the other reason that you'll see a lot more tech cards in tournament lineups than you will in ladder lists, because the goal is different. The goal is not, you can have a 33% win rate with a deck in Conquest and still win the match, right? Because you could go to lose twice, win the third time, win with the other two decks, and you're still win the match. So that's where the threshold is a little bit different, because it's not like trying to win over a large number of games against arbitrary opponents. It's generally a much more compressed meta, and you just need to get that one win with the deck.
Or conversely, you might not. There might be a ladder deck that does tech against something that you're just going to ban. So
Yes.
you don't even bother with it. If there's some deck that is extremely popular, you can, and you're a deck builder, and you can target it specifically, especially if there's lots of things that can make it like, all right, this tech card might be worth it. It works against a large swath of things, or it's still pretty good synergy with the rest of your deck, or your deck has an open 30th card anyway, is running ETC anyway, whatever it is. Your deck generates a lot of things, so if you have a dead draw, it's not that big of a deal versus a tight, especially an aggressive list. Yeah. Or it's bad in a certain type of matchup that the rest of your deck is super good against, and you're going to win them anyway.
Like me adding Deafen to my Miracle Rogue, like that was a tech choice specifically for Paladin. But worst case scenario, I get to deal 2 damage for 1 mana to a minion. Like
Yeah.
you have to combo
Right.
it. It's like silence minion, combo, deal 2 damage as well. You usually do 2 damage, and you don't play it if you're not going to deal 2 damage. And 1 mana spells are just good for Miracle. So the fail scenario was not so bad on that. And I often found myself doing things like, silencing a Chillfallen Baron, or just anything with text, right? Like
which is most things
Yeah.
in Hearthstone, turns out.
like when silence is efficient, it's pretty good, which is why Priest can run Shard of the Naru, because it's 1 mana. It's really solid.
And it's tradable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's also like, that's the other reason that you have to be careful with like top 100 lists, because those metas tend to get very compressed, right? You're playing against a much smaller group of players who are all tryharding, and generally they're coalescing around a smaller number of decks. So you will have people say, well, everybody was playing X and I had this deck that countered them, so I just farmed them and I climbed and I lost to everything else, right? And that's a valid strategy in top 100. You will not see that often, that high of a percentage of one deck or two decks in a regular ladder session if you're not playing a top 100. It is a valid strategy to say, my deck farms Paladin, 60% of my opponents are Paladin. I don't know if there is anything, but like theoretically right now, like 60% of my opponents are Paladin. I can farm them, lose everything else, and I have a 60% win rate. You are not going to see 60% of anything, very likely, unless you're also playing at those ranks.
Yeah, and in today's Vicious Syndicate report, top 1K Legend was 23.9% Paladin.
Which is a lot.
Which is a lot.
It's not like you can afford to only beat Paladin.
Yeah.
Right.
But there have been metas where the people have done that, Right.
Like, but oftentimes if there's one deck that really is that much of the meta, it's that much of the meta because you can't really counter it and it needs to be nerfed now.
Yes,
or people don't like the counters. I mean,
that's
when
true. Or people don't like
Demon Hunter was filthy on release, people were playing Risky Skipper Armorsmith, right? Like, but yeah, even that wasn't a guaranteed thing. So, yeah, it's the situation of like, well, I could play Control Priest specifically built to beat Paladin, but it's not very good against other things.
And 75% of the meta is other things.
Yeah.
So people, there's enough people who don't want to play the one deck most of the time that will be true. You need to at least be somewhat okay versus the rest of the field almost always. We also had a few notes here. So let's say that you are playing a tech card. One thing you want to think about is, when do I play this tech card? You don't necessarily want to get tunnel vision on, except for in certain situations where it really is key. Most of the time, you don't want to just be thinking about, I have to draw my tech card and I have to play my tech card and that's the only thing that you're thinking about. Sometimes if you don't keep or don't play your tech card because you have a different win condition going that'll work faster, that's the right call. Or sometimes you might want to tempo your tech card, although probably don't tempo your dirty rat in unless you have light it burns.
You mean you shouldn't give people a turn 2 Hydrolodon? What?
I had people give me turn 2 Countesses, and it's like, okay, I can't get my invitations, but also I have a free 7/7, and now you're dead.
Yeah.
Like they didn't. One time it was a priest, but they didn't have light it burns, and I'm like, why did you do that?
Well, no,
Shame.
it just does the thing, right? You just play dirty rat and then you win. That's how that works. That's not how that works.
But something like Framester, Framester is a different example because Framester just works whenever you play it. But some cards you might want to tempo if you don't have something else going on. If you do know that you need this card at a particular moment, like you are playing Dirty Rat, you are trying to pull their Odin, for example, say people start playing Odin Warrior again, then you want to definitely pay attention to when am I playing this card and plan around you're going to need to play that card, say on 7, before they get to 8 mana. Or obviously if you're playing against a Nature Shaman, you really want to pay attention to when do I need the Speaker Stomper. So if you do know that you need the card, you need to plan around the fact that you're going to need to be playing this card.
Right. But also, like, Nature Shaman, I don't know if it's still the case, but certainly, at least originally, the way you teched against Nature Shaman was playing big things and hitting them in the face. Because they couldn't deal with... That was actually more effective than Speaker Stomper. That's one of those things where the hard tech cards are... It's easier to see exactly what it's doing, but sometimes just, like, playing your cards and hitting your opponent in the face and not letting them draw and find whatever horrible thing they're about to do to you is just as effective as the tech cards, right? Mm-hmm. Like, just playing aggressively sometimes is the best tech card of all. Just like sometimes the reward is the friends we made along the way. You know, I wish Hat was here because he would probably lose his mind if he heard those words coming out of my mouth right now. But
we'll have to clip it and send it.
Yeah. But I mean, also, like, there are cards that you would just run in your deck normally that can become tech cards in certain matchups. Like Doomkin against Odin Warrior is a great example of that, right? Where Doomkin is just a good card that you want to get down, but you really want to find it against, like, an Odin Warrior because it delays them being able to get their stuff online. It gives you a chance to get your Sargeras down before they can get their Odin down so you can actually play with taunts, right? Like, that's a scenario where it's not really a tech card, but it becomes, like, part of your overall strategy where it becomes kind of like a tech card in that matchup, even though you just play it normally otherwise anyway.
Yeah, I'll treat that way. You know, if I'm a paladin and I'm in a mirror, I might prioritize my AoEs more in the mull, especially if I already have a 1-drop. You know, if I have a 1-drop and Boogie Down and Keeper's Strength, Keeper's Strength gets to stay. But that's not a tech card, you know. Yeah, lots of cards can almost become tech cards in the right matchup. And when you are thinking about, do I want to include this tech card? Do I want to play this tech card I have? It's partly, do I want the game to go long enough that I need this tech card? Otherwise, maybe I don't keep it in the mull, or I trade it, or I don't put it in my deck at all, if the goal is actually not to have the game go long enough that you need it. You know, do I win if I play this? Do I win if I don't play this? Sometimes that's a little trickier than it seems because the tech card seems like it's what won you the game, but that's not necessarily how it works.
I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons why, pure paladins do so well at a certain point is because you can't run any tech cards.
Yeah.
So, like, your deck breaks if you run, tech cards, and so it keeps people from doing the thing of, like, I lost to this, let me add a tech card for more value or whatever, right? Like
the tech card that most people would run against is the card they're running themselves a lot of the time, which is Prismatic Beam. So
yeah, and that works fine. But that's a great point, that it's a deck that prevents you from making bad deck building decisions for the most part.
I don't know. I made a pure Spirit of the Badlands deck. So.
Oh, that's ambitious. Are there 30 playable Paladin cards?
There are.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's a core set of paladin cards, and then you can throw kind of whatever else you want, and there's a lot of good paladin cards right now, actually.
It might actually be worth looking into, after Paladin gets rebalanced.
There was 0% chance paladin is the same this time next week. I don't know anything, but I'm just saying that.
They could just buff
we know
everything
something's
else.
happening, and it'd be really surprising if, yeah. I mean, does it feel to you all like after Order in the Court got changed, it got worse? I
It's
I
just
don't know
in
if
a
that's
way.
true, but it felt like it.
Well, because then they nerfed. Well, it was for like a week, and then they nerfed Enrage Warrior.
Right. Yeah.
And that and slowed down Mage, and then we were so back, right? So
It also almost, I found in a way that I was expecting the deck to feel a lot worse when we cut Order of the Court, but
You
it
just run more
almost
draw.
felt better. You just run more draw.
Yeah.
You still have your early game later, as long as you just don't only draw your early game. You're pretty set. You know, I was like, will Paladin survive Order in the Court? And then I thought, well, every other class gets by with just drawing cards the
without
normal way.
rearranging their deck. Yeah.
And you don't need to put 8/8 into your deck when you can make any of your minions that sticks into an 8/8 that has charge.
And Hammer of Wrath is just reach. So that's
And oftentimes with Order in the Court, if your big push didn't work, then you were drawing your deck in a really awkward order and you were kind of done. And I find that I'm done. Ironically, not having my late game on demand actually was making me go longer when I needed to. So in a way, it worked. It worked out fine for Paladin, as well as they also had, Warrior and Mage nerfed. That's definitely important. But I can see why Order in the Court seemed like it would be good enough. But I can also see in hindsight why we need more help here on Paladin.
Well, just because like the whole showdown Sea Giant thing was just fun, right? And then we realized that we didn't actually need the Sea Giants. We could just play those cards anyway and then just continue to hit the opponent in the face regardless. So why play the Sea Giants?
Showdown Beam is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I would often get laser focused on like, oh, I have my showdown, I need my beam, but it would take too long to draw the beam when I did it with Order in the Court. And I don't feel like I have it less often now than I did when there was still Order in the Court. So when I saw that nerf, I definitely thought, oh, that'll do it. But whether it's that or the other balance changes or both,
because they didn't change Boogie Down, so it's still fine. So it turns out that Call to Arms is still a good card even all these years later. So
it's not Call to Arms.
They are 1-drop still, and there's only 2 of them.
Call to Arms got 2 drops and 3 of them.
But it is definitely still a good card. It's when you have the Paladin mirrors, it's like, do both of you get Boogie Down? Do both of you get Keeper's Strength? Do both of you get a Garden's Grace in time and some holy spells early? There's definitely things that can go wrong in the mirror match. But I wouldn't say it's only determined by draw order or anything like that. The Paladin mirrors,
No, of course
but
not.
it is frustrating when I had a game where both Keeper's Strength and both Prismatic Beams were in the bottom 10 cards of my deck. So I didn't win that one.
This is talking about a deck that literally cannot play tech cards.
Yes. I've also been frustrated when my Sif is in the bottom 5 cards of in every single game where I actually need to kill my opponent with Sif. So that.
Oh
happens.
yeah, that's just science, and that shows.
Yeah.
Draw order is part of Hearthstone. It happens with everything, and Paladin is not necessarily determined so much by like, did I draw one exact card? You have multiple copies of the cards you need to draw.
The whole tangent about Paladin was basically just to say, hey, this is a deck that cannot play tech cards, and it is sometimes better for it, because the number of times that you're just like, I'm tired of losing to this thing, and you add in the tech card, and you don't see any of that thing anymore.
Yeah.
That is always how it works. If you find yourself tilt teching, stop. Friends don't let friends tilt tech. Just take a break, play a different deck, go touch grass, then come back, then see if you still need this thing. I've been guilty of this before myself. I actually did it in Paladin once, not recently, but shortly after we got the auras. I can't remember.
Resistance
It was
aura. Is
Resistance
possible.
aura,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I was really annoyed at rogues, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Rogues and
Yeah.
or druids. And I was like, I think it was druid actually. I was like, I am sick of them not only ramping, but then playing every single card they have right afterwards. So I put in Resistance aura and then promptly saw no druids.
Yeah.
So there was
And
actually
now
a
they
brief
just play a
point
bunch of
where-
minions.
Now Resistance aura doesn't even help.
Yeah.
It's still free anyway with Thaddeus.
It's like the extreme couponing of Hearthstone at that point. You know, it's everything's
it's-
free.
It's impressive the first time that you lose to the fire druid, and then you're like, oh god, this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
You do wait and just make sure they have it. You know, just like
Well-
with a nature shaman, do wait and make sure they have it, but because sometimes they don't, but usually the fire druid has it.
My strategy is get up, go get a snack, come back, and if you're not on a lost screen, then you take your turn. Right? Because like whatever they're doing on their turn, it doesn't matter. You only need to see what happened at the end of it anyway. So go get yourself a snack, get a drink, then come back. If you actually need to keep playing the game, then then you get to do it. But you'll find out one way or the other. Sometimes they concede at the end of it because they messed up. That happens too. Not as often, but you know.
I think the last bit of this that I want to touch on is stuff around like, when do you keep a tech card in your mulligan? And I honestly think like you get a little more leeway when it's tradable, right? Because if like I would sometimes keep Viper in case of a keyboard on 2, not so much anymore, but for a while against Mage, it was like, I'll keep Viper for a turn 2 keyboard against Mage, and then if they don't have it, I trade it away, right? But you don't, if you're playing Control, you don't keep Dirty Rat against Mage, right? Like, you'll try and pick it up later.
Yeah.
If you don't need it right away, you don't keep it in the mall. Even if, you're playing Control Priest and Sif is a big problem for you.
Yeah. Like if you needed something against Sharpshooter, you would keep that in the mulligan,
Yes.
right? Because that's something that's coming out on 3 or 4. If you need a way to kill a 5 health minion when it was 5 health, you would keep that in the mulligan. It's really just a matter of understanding, are you trying to thwart their eventual win condition? Because if it's Dirty Rat, like they're not keeping Sif in the mulligan either. So like you don't want that right away. You want them to have played out most of their minions and then try to Dirty Rat at the right time. So that's when you don't want to keep that. You want to draw the other stuff, and then you'll draw it. Just trust your deck that you'll draw into it in time.
Believe in the heart of the cards.
Yeah. But so like it's just really a matter of knowing like what you're trying to counter and when does it tend to get played, right? Like if you're playing against Reno Shaman and you have a Viper, you probably hold that. Because you probably want to be able to kill the Doc Holiday weapon on 5, right? And that's reasonable to hold that.
If the capped win rate of the card you're trying to counter is above 60%, maybe keep the tech card.
Yeah.
The other thing that I see people do sometimes is like I see priests trade shard when I'm playing like Undead Priest. And I'm playing in Rage Warrior. And it's like, this is going to be useful soon.
Yeah.
Like next turn, this is going to be just hold your.
What are you trying to get that's better than that?
Yeah. So you're asking, yes, do they have anything else to play? Actually, if they're a Control Priest, they don't need to have anything else to play. They can Hero Power Pass.
There are mind games to this. For Shard specifically, I would say. You run 2 of them. If you have them both, you trade one to make them go in and then play the other one.
And then you play a starfish just to assert dominance.
I've seen so many blood DKs with starfish, not like this week, but I'm
Yeah.
always
Because
like, really?
it's not actually good against paladin, right? So they need starfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
that makes
if
sense.
they're being Highlander, they don't have 2 corpse explosions.
Yeah, but also it still leaves the minion, so it's not actually doing much because they'll just build it up again, right? So it's that's the other thing. Like, what are you doing? Like, are you actually solving the problem with starfish against paladin? You're not actually solving the problem. You're just delaying the inevitable because there's going to be more buffs behind it, right? So you're actually just kind of stalling a little bit. I mean, yeah, you are. You might buy yourself enough time to find a clear, but
Right.
Yeah, it's especially helps against Earthland, or just getting a high-ho silver-winged silenced is quite annoying because you actually may not have the holy spell buffs in hand.
Mhm.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
plenty of times where like I actually do need this thing to die so that I can get like Hand of It All.
Well, and yeah, definitely. I would sometimes deafen the Hi-Ho Silverwing rather than waiting for them to Garden's Grace something and hit me and then have to deafen it, right? Like, I would
Yeah, because
rather
the buffs
try
have
and
charge a lot of the time, effectively.
I would rather try and, slow things down, slow down the card draw, than wait until they play the big buff and I have to silence that. Sometimes it would happen, but
Yes. Sometimes when you're playing the Paladin, you do have to make your 15 attack minion. It's not lethal, and then hope it sticks. You think about whether they have something that makes it not stick. But often you're doing that when you do have lethal, and so they're dead anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered this pretty thoroughly. Do we have anything else that we want to have as last words about tech cards?
they're often canaries.
No, that's
Often-
that comes out of an excavate. That's not a tech card.
Sorry, canaries in the coal mine. Yeah, it's like, I think the fact that Viper sometimes times 2, like, sometimes one in the ETC, is kind of a testament to the fact that Ignis is maybe an issue.
Yeah.
Maybe not one that's going to be dealt with now, but I think eventually we're going to get real tired of, losing to 10 mana Ignis weapons.
Yeah. It's like when we were running Cobalt Sticky Fingers in the Evolved Shaman meta to get to steal the Evolve weapon instead of allowing it to be destroyed so the pirate that equipped a destroyed weapon could bring it back again, right?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah,
that's generally, like, when a tech card becomes meta, like when silence becomes meta or weapon destruction becomes meta, then generally there's a bigger problem, right? When that, because like that's never a healthy meta, just because like now you're playing 28 cards. If you're running 28 cards and 2 Vipers, now everybody's running 28 card decks, and that's not healthy either. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
It is important to have them as safety valves in the meta, and also I think there are some players who do feel like they have more agency with them, even when maybe in an objective win rate sense it's not a good idea. Also, remember that just do I draw this card doesn't really feel like more agency either. So if you're thinking about whether this is going to make you feel like you have more agency in the matchup, it might not. But I do think having tech cards, and especially tech cards that don't feel so terrible to play, they have tradable, they have other uses, serves a purpose in the meta. But they are often, if everyone's running them, and not just cards like Reno Shaman that have a lot of tech cards, we might have a problem.
Yeah. Once a tech card is actually like good and correct, that there's an issue, right? That's why Starfish had to get nerfed from 3 to 4, right? And Druid was in a situation where they're like, I mean, our last couple of cards, we can sort of choose whatever. We draw our whole deck every game anyways, right?
Yeah.
So
Starfish wasn't really teching anything against anything. Starfish was just there in case your opponent happened to have a taunt, so you could just silence it and still get lethal. That was
Sure.
more what Starfish was doing back then.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, I think a lot of the times, I mean, I can't count the number of times on like, a VS report or something. It's just like, hey, don't actually run weapon destruction. But before Ignis was a thing, just very frequently tech cards are an emotional response. They have their place, and when they're appropriate, do run them. They are common in tournaments because, like we talked about, it's much more specific situation, and expectations are different. You get to ban something, which is a big deal. But yeah, if you're playing something aggressive, the best tech card is just kill them.
Yes.
See, I don't play tech cards very often.
Yeah.
I like decks where you want every card you're drawing to be part of your tight game plan, and you're killing them. We don't have 4 mana for an ETC.
And if you
They're
really
supposed
want to
be
play
dead
tech
in 2
cards,
turns.
just play Control, where everything is a tech card.
It's true. where you literally can't make the right list until the meta has stabilized because you don't know what to put in the deck.
Yep.
All right. Well, we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinconcede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com, and write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you would like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Kresh, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Ballcaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, Grizzly Bear, and The Grand Arcanum. Coin concedes?
Well, I'm going to coin concede to the Hearthstone community team for sending us the swag boxes this week, which are absolutely glorious. Edel is actually wearing the coat, which is part of it right now, and they sent us these delightful hats that are
could have done without, but
well, no, they're ridiculous, which is why they sent them to us. But yeah, these were delightful, and also yes, they are ridiculous hats from Ridiculous Hat. Yes, and also a really nice blanket on top of that, and the pin is nice too. So I always appreciate getting that. It was like a bigger box than I was expecting, and it was just kind of full of stuff, and it's always a nice surprise when we get those things. So thank you to them for that, for including us in that.
The blanket is the perfect size for me to use to cover up the foam puzzle piece things we have to cushion the floor for the baby, because Weiss loves to just knead her claws on those, and it is not good for them. So gotta have a blanket to protect them from the cat.
Yeah. Thank you so much for those. And yes, I don't know where I'm putting that hat, but it is very funny.
Yes.
Right now it's just like the box is just on my floor, but we'll figure something out. And there's some really nice. I really appreciate it, as I did last time as well. I will coin concede to the Georgius, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Cora and Sage and Just a Guy, for being a major family in the Hearthstone world. Excellent game designers, a very funny Twitter comedian, as well as other content creator, and friend of the show. And also, Cora is part of why we even have Coin Concede. So a coin concede to all of them.
We've got to get you to come to their house pre-BlizzCon next time.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I would be honored.
I would like to coin concede to actually Hat and Cora, because when the moments where I was freaking out, they were like, "Hey, we don't think this is correct. We're gonna go talk to some folks. Calm down." And it managed to get worked out. But yeah, really appreciate them, going to bat for me, making sure that I am actually casting this weekend. So,
and we were happy that you're casting too.
Yes.
So yeah, so I guess we'll see you after Worlds, and I guess we'll have a lot to talk about, given that one of us will have a front row seat and the other two of us will be watching intently from the comfort of our couches and or gaming chairs. But until next time, Keep calm and make your tech card hitting them in the face. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.